particularly pleased to welcome Ghayath Naisse, who's a Syrian socialist, part of the revolutionary left current. The meeting will have a translator. There'll be time for questions and contributions as usual, and then Ghayath will sum up at the end. So over to you.
Thank you, comrade. في الواقع كل من 5 سنوات أنا أحضر ماركسية وكل عام أقول في العام القادم سأتحدث بالإنجليزية.
I've been coming to Marxism for 5 years, and every year I tell you that the next year I'll be speaking in English.
سينتهي بكم الأمر بالتحدث بالعربية في أغلب الظن.
Maybe you'll end up speaking Arabic at the end of the day.
ما هو الوضع في سوريا؟ أعتقد الحقيقة وحدها هي ثورية. الماركسيون يقومون في عملهم السياسي على التحليل الملموس للوقائع والابتعاد عن وضع رغباتهم مكان الواقع.
So, how can we describe the situation in Syria today? For Marxists, only the truth is revolutionary, and we must rely on analyzing the actual context and the concrete context in its reality, and not try to indulge in wishful thinking.
الثورة بدأت في درعا عام 2000 في آذار 2011، واليوم الجمعة قبل يومين ما تبقى من فصائل الجيش الحر في درعا وقعت على وثيقة استسلامها لروسيا وللنظام السوري.
So the revolution started in Daraa in March 2011, and 2 days ago on Friday, what was left of the last Free Syrian Army armed groups in Daraa signed on what is really a capitulation, a surrender to the Russian forces and the Syrian regime.
ما أريد قوله بكل بساطة ولو كانت هذه الحقيقة مؤلمة على أن الثورة السورية الشعبية العظيمة جدا هزمت وهزمنا.
Yeah, what I want to state very, very clearly, and although it's a hurtful truth, is that the great Syrian popular revolution has been defeated.
هزمت لا يعني ذلك أن علينا أن نستسلم وأن نجلس في بيوتنا وأن ننتظر يعني جودو، بل أعتقد أنه في كل لحظة من اللحظات كائنا ما كانت صعوبة الوقائع على الماركسيين الثوريين مهمات يجب وعليهم أن يقوموا بها.
So if we recognize that the revolution is defeated, this doesn't mean that, it's the end of the story and we should just sit at home and lament and wait for some miracle to happen. We still have duties as revolutionary Marxists, even in the hardest of times.
سأقوم فقط بتذكير سريع، وأنتم أصبحتم خبراء في الواقع في الثورات العربية والثورة في سوريا، تذكير سريع عما كانت عليه الثورة السورية. كما تعلمون قامت الثورة السورية بشكل سلمي وجميل ومبدع، أقامت منظمات من الأسفل لتنظيم كفاحها هي لجان التنسيق، وأقامت مجالس محلية لإدارة المناطق التي بعدت أو خرجت عن سيطرة النظام.
So I'm just going to do a small, quick recap of the Syrian revolution. It started as a peaceful, popular movement with grassroots organizations like the local coordination committees that could, organize the struggle, and sometimes even to a certain extent organize life in the regions that were abandoned by the regime.
لكن ظاهرتين سببين أو عاملين أديا إلى تسلح الثورة التي كانت سلمية. من جهة هو وحشية النظام البعثي لآل الأسد الذي مارس أقصى أنواع الوحشية والعنف ضد المتظاهرين السلميين، ومن جهة أخرى ظاهرة انشقاق عدد كبير وخاصة عام 2012 من الجنود وبعض الضباط الذين رفضوا إطلاق النار على المتظاهرين السلميين.
There are two main fundamental factors that explain the militarization of the Syrian revolution, especially in the year 2012. That was a pivotal year. The first is obviously the incredible violence and the barbarity of the Ba'athist Assad regime, which suppressed and killed many thousands of protesters. And the other side of that is the fact that, especially in the year 2012. We had hundreds and thousands of soldiers and officers who have defected from the Syrian army because in one way or another they have refused to engage in repression, and they went over to the side of the revolution.
هذا التسلح فتح الباب إلى عدد من العوامل الخارجية التي فعلت فعلها في الثورة السورية، بمعنى النظام استدعى حلفائه الأساسيين حزب الله وإيران بشكل عسكري لمساعدته عسكريا. من جهة أخرى تركيا ودول الخليج ساعدت في دعم عدد من المجموعات الجهادية داخل سوريا.
Okay. And this militarization has opened the door to the intrusion of external factors in the Syrian revolution and in the civil war. First of all, obviously, there's the regime that has called upon his allies, his main allies, Hezbollah and Iran, to intervene militarily to prop it up. And on the other side, there is the intervention of Turkey and many Gulf countries that was perhaps more indirect, but that was aimed to bring military and financial support to jihadist armed groups.
وتم التخلي عن الجيش السوري الحر، ما يعرف بظاهرة الجيش السوري الحر، وهو في الحقيقة لا علاقة له بمفهوم الجيش، كان هو عبارة عن مقاومة شعبية يشبه تماما لجان التنسيق المحلية باعتبارها ظاهرة محلية أساسا وليست جيشا مركزيا.
And this process has led to the abandonment and to the slow decay of the Free Syrian Army, which we must say is not really was never really a centralized army, but it kind of resembled the local coordination committee in the fact that it was more of a people at arms instance that had a very local and perhaps fragmented character. It was never really a centralized army with a centralized command.
كان العامل الأساسي أو يعني هناك نقطة اتفاق أساسية بين الأطراف الإقليمية المتصارعة فيما بينها. نقطة اتفاق أساسية هي أنها كانت تعمل من أجل إجهاض الثورة الشعبية السورية.
And what the different external and internal warring sides in Syria agreed on was was their hostility to the aspirations of the Syrian people and of the Syrian revolutions that were expressed in 2011-2012.
ومع عام 2013 و2014 بدأنا نلحظ تماما انحسار الحراك الشعبي من جهة وتقدم قوى الثورة المضادة متعددة الأطراف داخل سوريا من جهة أخرى.
And in the years 2013 and 2014, we start seeing very clearly the sharp retreat of the popular movement and the advance of the various counter-revolutionary forces.
مع احتلال ايزيس للرقة عام 2014 وتشكيلها مساحة جغرافية توازي ويمكن تفوق مساحة سوريا نفسها، كان واضحا أن ميزان القوى أصبح لصالح القوى الثورة المضادة.
And with the invasion of Raqqa by ISIS and the fact that across the border, from Syria and Iraq, it has carved out a territory, a so-called Islamic State, that was almost as big or even bigger than Syria itself. This was a very clear signal that the counter-revolution was on the rise and was advancing.
ما فعله النظام تجاه الثورة أو مناطق الثورية في سوريا شيء يجب أن يبقى في الذاكرة. لقد قام النظام بسحق بكل معنى الكلمة، جعلها بتاتا ترابا كل المناطق والبلدات والضواحي الشعبية التي ثارت عليه، إن كان في ضواحي دمشق ولا في خارج في الريف، في كل المحافظات، كل المدن والبلدات التي ثارت عليه حولها إلى تراب.
And if it is something that we must really write in our history, it is what the regime has done to the neighborhoods, to the towns, to the cities that have rised up against him. Any town, any neighborhood, and any city that has actually taken part in the popular revolution, whether the suburbs of Damascus, the Damascus countryside, which is a bit further away, or even other cities and neighborhoods, all of these have been literally annihilated. They're no longer fit to live. And this is something that we must remember.
وهذا ما كنا نقول أو نسميه هو فعلا أن هناك تطابق ما بين الخريطة الجغرافية للمناطق التي ثارت على النظام مع الخريطة الاجتماعية للقوى الاجتماعية التي ثارت على النظام وهي الطبقات الشعبية.
And this is something that we've been saying from the beginning, is that there's kind of an overlap between the regions of the country that have risen up against the regime and the regions of the country that are the poorest, that are the most popular in character.
لم يمارس فقط القتل واعتقال المناضلين أو الجماهير الشعبية التي ثارت عليه، بل أيضا يعني سياسته كانت هي سياسة الأرض المحروقة، هي تجفيف الأرضية الاجتماعية الاقتصادية حتى الجغرافية حتى الحياتية للمناطق التي ثارت عليه، بحيث أنك يعني أصبح تراب هناك صحراء، لا يوجد بشر، لا يوجد عالم، أصبحوا لاجئين داخل سوريا وخارجها.
So the regime didn't simply arrest and kill activists and protesters. It adopted really a scorched earth policy, really destroying every aspect of the social economic basis of the regions that rose up against him. So that today they resemble more of a desert. People are either dead or refugees inside or outside of Syria.
لم تكن هذه السياسة اعتباطية، كانت مقصودة، أنها سياسة مقصودة تماما، يعرف النظام ماذا كان يفعل.
And this wasn't simply an accident. The regime knew very well what it was doing.
ما هو الوضع الراهن إنسانيا للشعب السوري اليوم؟ كما تعرفون مثلا أن ثلث المنازل والبيوت في سوريا تم تحطيمها جزئيا أو بشكل كامل.
And the humanitarian situation in Syria today, as you know, is really catastrophic. A third of all Syrian buildings have either been destroyed or really severely damaged. A third of all Syrian buildings are today unfit for human living.
أكثر من 6 ملايين نازحين داخليا.
Over 6 million internally
ما
displaced.
يعادلهم لاجئين خارج البلاد.
And as many are refugees outside of Syria.
الآن 85% من الشعب السوري عموما تحت خط الفقر اليوم.
And today, somewhere like 85% of the Syrian people are under the poverty line.
اللاجئون والموتى لا يقومون بثورات.
Refugees and the dead do not make revolutions.
هذه هي سياسة النظام.
This is the regime's policy.
إذن الوضع مأساوي جدا أيها الرفاق. يعني ما هو واضح عندنا اليوم مثلا في المنطقة، أصبحت سوريا نموذجا لدى الأنظمة الحاكمة في عموم المنطقة إن أرادت أن تخيف شعبها تقول لهم انظروا ما حصل في سوريا، كما حصل مثلا تصريحات حكومية قبل أسابيع أو أسبوعين في الأردن مثلا. يخرج سياسيين أردنيين تابعين للنظام يقولوا هل تريدون أن يجري عندنا كما حصل في سوريا؟ السعودية نفس الشيء، لما خرجت بعض المظاهرات يقولون لهم المغرب نفس الشيء، هل تريدون أن يجري لدينا ما جرى في سوريا؟ أصبحت سوريا نموذج تخيف فيه الأنظمة شعوبها ضد أن تثور عليها.
So not only is the Syrian situation today really catastrophic, but Syria has become some sort of a scarecrow for Arab leaders who, whenever there is a bit of trouble, a bit of social unrest, use the example of Syria to say, well, this is where it leads. If you demonstrate for your rights, this is where it leads. We've seen it a couple of weeks ago in Jordan when there were demonstrations against IMF measures, in Saudi Arabia, in Morocco over the last year. So Syria has really become a scarecrow that is used by Arab leaders.
في نفس الوقت فإن تدخل الدول الإقليمية والدولية في سوريا أصبح يعني مباشرا وعسكريا وفجا، حيث نجد هناك روسيا وهي العامل الأساسي الفاعل الأساسي اليوم عسكريا وسياسيا في تقرير مصير سوريا. لدينا إيران، لدينا تركيا، لدينا الولايات المتحدة مع التحالف ما يسمى بالتحالف الدولي، بعض القوات البريطانية والفرنسية والدنماركية وغيرها. وبالتالي هناك تداخل لنشاط لقوى إقليمية ودولية تتفق أحيانا ولكن تختلف وتتنازع وتتنافس فيما بينها.
And obviously Syria today has become a field, sort of a rivalry field for many different foreign forces, military forces. Obviously there is Russia, which is the main military and political player in Syria today, Iran, Turkey, the US, as part of a coalition of the willing with the French and the UK military and others. And these forces, sometimes agree and sometimes disagree on how to advance their interests in the country.
الوضع اليوم في سوريا أيضا كان لغاية العام الماضي خلال نقاشات مشوش لدى الكثير من المناضلين والباحثين والمهتمين بالوضع السوري، بمعنى في تداخل، هناك مناطق الجيش الحر وهناك مناطق توجد فيها إيران، تركيا، النظام، روسيا إلى آخره. اليوم المسألة أصبحت أكثر فأكثر وضوحا، وسأشرحه ببساطة وبحاول التبسيط قليلا. سوريا اليوم مقسمة إلى مناطق نفوذ.
So perhaps
I have to speak English, so.
Well, yes. Perhaps in the past couple of years, with certain regions of Syria still under the control of the Free Syrian Army, certain regions still under the control of ISIS, the situation appeared a bit confusing to many actually Syrian activists and researchers and foreign activists and all that. Today, I'd like to argue that the situation has become much simpler, and this is something that I'll try to explain over the rest of my talk.
أكثر بساطة لا يعني أكثر إيجابية، بالعكس أكثر سوءا.
It is simpler, but it doesn't mean that it is more positive.
It's worse. فهناك إذا منطقة كبيرة أصبحت اليوم تحت نفوذ أو استعاد النظام السوري نفوذه عليها بمساعدة إيران وبالذات في مساعدة روسيا. حوالي 65% من الأراضي السورية اليوم أصبحت تحت سيطرة النظام.
Okay. Around 65% of Syrian territory today has been regained by the regime and is today controlled by the regime in one way or another with the help of the Russians and the Iranians.
هناك منطقة في شمال غرب سوريا جرابلس وعزاز واحتلال التركي لعفرين اللي كان فعلا ضربة قاسية للحركة الديمقراطية السورية، زائد منطقة إدلب يعني شمال غرب سوريا تحت السيطرة أو الاحتلال التركي.
And there's a whole region in northwestern Syria from Jarablus to Azaz to Afrin that was taken recently by the Turkish military, and this was a big blow to the democratic forces in Syria, and Idlib, which is under Turkish control and Turkish occupation.
وهناك منطقة روجافا أو شمال شرق سوريا وشرق الفرات حيث تدور تجربة فريدة متميزة، ولكن يوجد هناك تواجد أيضا أمريكي وبريطاني ما يسمى بالتحالف الدولي، يعني في قواعد عسكرية لهم. هذا التحالف بين الحركة الكردية أو الإدارة الذاتية هناك والتحالف الدولي وفق ما يقولوه الرفاق مع نقاشاتنا معهم هو تحالف، أنا أريد أن نركز عليه، تحالف تكتيكي وعسكري، وسأشير إلى لماذا.
Okay. And in the northeast of Syria, around the region of what is known as Rojava, we have obviously the Kurdish presence and the experiment of Kurdish self-rule with the help of the US and the UK and other imperialist powers. And I want to focus on that and discuss that perhaps in a sort of a critical manner.
إذا كان هناك وهم على أن العلاقة مع الولايات المتحدة يمكن أن تكون علاقة حليف استراتيجي، فهذا الوهم سقط عمليا، سقط بالتجربة الملموسة وليس بنقاشاتنا النظرية. أنا أحكي بالنسبة للحركة الكردية.
And if, from the point of view of the Kurdish movement, there was some sort of an illusion of a strategic partnership on an equal footing with the United States, this illusion has really evaporated because of events and not because of some theoretical impossibility.
كيف هذا الرهان سقط إذا كان هناك وهم عن بعض الأشخاص؟ هو أولا عندما هجم الجيش التركي على عفرين لاحتلاله، قالت الولايات المتحدة نحن لا علاقة لنا بالأمر، لا نستطيع أن نساعدكم، هذه منطقة هي تحت النفوذ محسوبة على الروس فتركوهم لمصيرهم.
Okay, and the first, what was really obvious is that the moment that the Turkish army attacked Afrin, which was under Kurdish control, under Kurdish military control, the US simply said, well, we're not really concerned with this and we cannot help you. This is a zone that is under Russian influence, so you should see with them about stopping the Turks.
وقبل أسبوعين عندما شن النظام السوري بدعم الروسي هجمته الأخيرة على درعا، أرسلت الولايات المتحدة رسالة إلى الفصائل الجيش الحر في درعا تقول لهم ندعوكم إلى مفاوضة الروس والتوصل إلى تفاهم معهم، لأننا إذا لا تراهنوا على مساعدة عسكرية لنا لكم فتخلوا عنهم.
And a couple of weeks ago, when the regime and the Russians attacked Daraa, which was still under the control of, maybe the last Free Syrian Army brigades that still had a relationship with the United States, the United States told them very clearly that our advice to you is that you would, negotiate with the Russians and the Syrians because, don't wait for any military aid from us. So they abandoned them quite clearly.
لقد تحقق ما كنا نقوله للرفاق إن كان في روجافا أو في عدد من مناطق سوريا، ما كان لديهم وهم على أن الولايات المتحدة ستساعد بين قوسين الديمقراطيين في سوريا. كنا نقول لهم التالي: من يمد له للولايات المتحدة الإمبريالية ينتهي به الأمر بأن يترك رأسه.
Okay, and unfortunately what we've been telling comrades for the past few years, whether Kurdish comrades or comrades in the Free Syrian Army, that had illusions in the fact that the United States was out there to help in one way or another democratic forces in Syria, is that you will end up losing. And he used a metaphor that I cannot possibly translate.
وهذا ما جرى للأسف. What?
It's not unparliamentary, it's just incompetent. So let's just go on with the meeting.
ترجم لي
شو لا عم بقول له انه ما عرفت ترجم
الجمله. الجمله راسه يترك يمد يده ويترك راسه.
Okay, just don't. You're betting on the wrong horse, basically. Let's just go on.
من يمد يده ويترك راسه للإمبريالية ما في.
بعدين
إذا أنت كنت جونتي يعني بالترجمة يعني.
احكي.
أوكي. إذا الواقع الحال في سوريا اليوم هو على أن السوريون عموما يعني القوى السياسية التي شكلتها الدول الإقليمية كما حال الائتلاف الوطني أو غيره والنظام نفسه لم يعد يمتلكون زمام مصيرهم. اليوم مصير سوريا ميدانيا عسكريا سياسيا هو بيد دول إقليمية ودولية وبشكل أساسي روسيا، إيران، تركيا والولايات المتحدة.
And the forces that were perhaps on the front lines in the first few years of the Syrian revolution, which are the regime on the one hand, and the various so-called institutions that emerge on the top of the Syrian revolution, today really don't really don't really have their fate in their own hands. Who really decides what will happen? The fate of Syria today lays with the various international powers that are struggling there, chief of which are Russia, Iran, Turkey, and the United States.
وخصوصا بغياب الحراك الشعبي أو اندحاره يعني من جهة.
Especially that in the absence of the popular movement on the one hand,
وتشتت القوى الديمقراطية والثورية عبر مناطق النفوذ التي ذكرتها سابقا.
and the fact that what remains of the democratic and revolutionary forces are really scattered all over Syria in those different regions that I've mentioned at the beginning of my talk.
إذا ما يجري اليوم في سوريا ما سبق أن ذكرته عام 2014 كانت بداياته بدأت تتوضح إنه الكرنفال of reaction.
And what's been happening in Syria since 2014 is a carnival of reaction.
طيب يعني هذا يفتح مآلين إمكانيتين اليوم لما يمكن أن تكون عليه الأحوال في البلاد يعني إما أن تتوافق هذه الدول فيما بينها وهو ما يجري الآن إلى مخرج سياسي تحقق كل منها مصالحه في سوريا وإما أن يتفاقم نزاعها في سوريا فتدوم الحرب وتدوم الآلام للشعب السوري.
And today the realistic short-term or middle-term possibilities, there are really two possible outcomes. Either the rival forces, international forces in Syria, come to some sort of an agreement in order to carve out the country, politically at least, between themselves, or the war continues and the pain of the Syrian people just continues and increases.
هذا لا يعني أن ليس لنا دورا علينا أن نقوم به.
This doesn't mean that we as revolutionaries have really nothing to do and can just wait passively.
نحن نعتقد أن واجبنا الرئيسي الآن هو محاولة تغيير موازين القوى وإنهاض الحراك الشعبي بشكل أو بآخر.
We think that our principal duty today is to try to perhaps influence all those relations or influence the balance of forces, and chiefly to try to, give some new life to the popular movement in Syria.
والهدف الرئيسي الآن في هذه المرحلة هي توحيد ساحات النضال الديمقراطية والثورية في سوريا اللي هي مقسمة جغرافيا وسياسيا كما ذكرت.
And what we need to do is to find a way to unite all the unite all the fields of struggle in Syria that are today really completely shattered and divided along geographic but also political lines.
في مراحل التراجع وانتصار الرجعية نحن نعتقد في تيار اليسار الثوري على أن تكتيك جبل متحدة ضروري ولازم ويجب الفعل عليه كثيرا في هذه اللحظات على مسائل تتعلق بالديمقراطية، مسائل تتعلق بالحراك الشعبي، بالعدالة الاجتماعية، بتوحيد البلاد، بإخراج القوات الإمبريالية.
Okay. And in a period of reaction, which is clearly the period that we are going through right now, we in the Syrian revolutionary current believe that the United Front tactic can be extremely important. We need to find a common ground to struggle for democratic causes, for causes of social justice, for causes even of national liberation from the foreign forces that are in Syria today.
وهذا ما نفعل عليه فهناك بوادر يعني نقاشات ومحاولات وتفاهمات بين عدد من القوى اليسارية والديمقراطية الثورية في سوريا بين روجافا وبعض القوى ونحن منها في مناطق سيطرة النظام وأيضا بعض المجموعات والأفراد في مناطق الاحتلال التركي.
And therefore, we are trying to go into talks and to build relationships with various democratic and revolutionary forces in Syria. This includes forces in Rojava, the Kurdish-controlled area, forces in zones that are under the control of the regime, and this is some of our activists are there, and forces that have come under Turkish occupation.
لأنه كما قالت روزا لوكسمبورغ إن الثورة هي الشكل الوحيد من الحرب الذي لا يمكن أن ينتصر بشكل نهائي إلا بعد سلسلة من الهزائم.
Because as the German revolutionary Rosa Luxemburg used to say, revolutions can only win after a series of defeats.
فعلينا أن نتعلم من تجاربنا وأخطائنا، أخطاء التجربة يعني الثورية في سوريا، لأني أعتقد الذاكرة لم تمحى بعد، ما تزال حية لدى قطاعات كبيرة. ملايين السوريين اليوم يتحدثون بالسياسة ويتحدثون عن مصير بلادهم.
And therefore, we need to learn the lessons of the defeat of the Syrian revolution. We need to learn from our mistakes, from the mistakes of the movement, and not everything is lost. Because today you have millions of Syrians who still remember the revolution and who still feel that they must have a say in the political future of their country.
لكننا لا نعتقد أن هذا العمل يجب أن يكون خارج سوريا، في أوساط السوريين خارج سوريا فقط. لا أعتقد أنه يمكن هناك أن نخلق موازين قوى تفعل إلى حد ما وتساهم في كفاح شعبنا في مخيمات اللجوء أو في العواصم الأوروبية وغيرها. هذا يجب أن يكون داخل سوريا بشكل أساسي.
Okay. But I don't believe that this work can be done primarily from outside of Syria. If we really want to have an influence in Syria, we cannot be based only within the refugee community in Europe or even in Turkey. The bulk of the work has to be done inside of Syria, because this is where we can have an influence.
كما أيضا أريد أن نركز على قضية أساسية كما سبق أن شرحت، على أن الثورة المضادة ليس لها رأسين، لها رؤوس عديدة.
And I want to focus on one specific fact, is that the counter-revolution in Syria does not have simply two heads. It is many multi-sided.
ليست القضية النظام والإسلاميين والحركة الثورية بين الاثنين، لا، الثورة المضادة أوسع من ذلك وأكثر تعددا أطرافها.
It's not really a question of the regime on the one side, the Islamic forces on the other side, and the revolution somehow in between. The counter-revolution is much wider than that.
وفي نفس الوقت علينا نحن كمناضلين ماركسيين ثوريين أن نبني المنظمة الثورية، أن نتابع رغم هذه الظروف، كما قال توني كليف، وأنا ما زال أتذكر هذه الكلمات رغم أني لم أعرفه شخصيا، ولكن أثرت بي منذ 15 عاما عندما قرأتها، أنه على الماركسيين الثوريين القيام بكل الظروف بشيء ما. لا يمكن أن نقول أن الظرف صعب، لا يوجد شيء يمكن أن نقوم به. أيا ما كان الظرف صعبا، هناك شيئا ما يجب علينا ويمكننا أن نقوم به، وهذا ما نفعله في سوريا.
And in spite of the very, very difficult situation, we still have to build our organizations. And I remember something that Tony Cliff wrote that I read some 15 years ago, and which really inspires me, which is that in any situation, whatever the situation, revolutionary Marxists have to do something.
It can do something.
And can do something.
Just سنتابع الكفاح أيها الرفاق، هذا ما أريد أن أؤكد عليه. ليس الموضوع نهاية الفيلم وانتهى، لا، أعتقد أن هناك تراث كبير من التجربة للشعب السوري والجماهير الشعبية السورية لم ننتهي إلى نهاية الفيلم أبدا. نحن في أحد مراحله.
Okay, so basically, in a nutshell, the struggle isn't over. Okay, this isn't the end of the movie. We're in a very difficult situation, but we can build on all those traditions that have been accumulated within the Syrian people because of the revolution, traditions of struggle and of the idea of political intervention.
ومرة أخرى وأختم بذلك يعني كما قالت روزا لجملة جميلة جدا تقول النظام والطبقات المالكة تعتقد أنها ماتت واحتضرت، تعتقد أنها وقعت على ركبها، أنها لن تنهض أبدا، ولكنها تنهض من جديد أقوى مما كانت عليه وتنتصر. إنها الثورة.
Okay. And I'd like to finish with a few words from Rosa Luxemburg. Ruling classes always think that the revolution is defeated and it will not rise again.
It is defeated.
It is defeated. And it will not rise again.
It's agonizing.
It is agonizing. Well, go on.
Get up.
It's a good time to learn English.
It is revolution.
But the revolution has to rise again, and it will rise again stronger than it was.
It is revolution.
Okay, I'm coming from Greece, from Socialist Workers Party. I'm very glad to be with a comrade here. He was also in Athens. And I think that one way to support the revival of Syrian revolution is to fight against racism in Europe. This is very important. Thousands of Syrian refugees who came in Europe, they brought with them the experience, the horrors of the war, but also the experience of resistance and revolution. So we have to connect with these people, we have to support the refugees and fight against the leaders of the European Union, and especially this terrible agreement that they did 1 week before. This is an agreement to bring more death in the Mediterranean Sea. This is an agreement to support imperialist intervention, because they say Islam is not for Europe, so these refugees are not welcome, and they are opening the space for the fascists. So it is very important to build again the solidarity movement for the refugees everywhere. It is a way to unite the working class. It is a way to build internationalism, and also it is a way to fight and stop the war. People are fighting against the austerity everywhere. People, they don't want weapons, they don't want police, they don't want militarization of the border. So for us, it is very crucial to support the Syrian and all the refugees, because this is the way how they can also have the support and the solidarity and the power to build again the revolutions in their countries. The revolutions are very crucial in this period because of Trump and because of imperialism. And we are optimistic, because if we are united, we can beat them.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Shahd, and I am from Syria. I've been here since 2005, and I involved heavily in the revolution as a human rights activist. The words of Mr. Ghayath brought a lot of emotion to me, because I lost my brother in the first year of, he was a doctor, and he was killed in Jobar. And Jobar is one of the hottest, places in Damascus. My understanding, who is responsible for what's happening in Syria? International community. International community wanted to see this in Syria. United Nations, a lot of reports, they're telling that United Nations involved in supporting al-Assad and in hiding his crimes, especially when the chemical attack happened in different times. In Idlib, in Damascus, in Aleppo, they covered the crime. And the question why, if we look at the United Nations structure, is 5 countries dominating the decision in the world. What is our sound? We have no sound, no voice for us there. This is first. Second, we are to blame. As a Marxist, you are believing in revolution. Where is your sound? Where have you been all this time? Syrian people were asking, where is the world around us? And they didn't see anybody there. They were suffering by themselves. They were dying by themselves, and they were, you knew the crime is there. You were watching with all respect. The crime was on the media. And the first time BBC Sheffield interviewed me, I came from Sheffield, by the way. The first time BBC Sheffield interviewed me, they called Syrian revolution civil war. I said, no, it's a revolution. It's not civil war. And they kept playing with the concept, and they kept playing with the words to convince the world that what's happening in Syria is civil war, just to take the right of the revolutionaries, that they are fighting for their own right. So I think to put that back and to bring more reality and more trust, because Syrian revolutionaries, they lost the trust on the world, including myself. I am fighting, and I'm glad to hear Ghayath today speaking in this sound, in this motivation, because in the last 7 years, I didn't hear similar sounds. Everyone in Syria was grouping to their groups and to the funder and to who is paying the money. But they were very rare who really believed in the revolution, and those very rare, they were either killed or they are in the prison. They disappeared. We have only few people there who still believe in the revolution. We need to search for them. They are the diamonds of Syria. We need to search for these diamonds and help them to collect together. These who have the spirit of revolution, we need to keep them together and help them to really create and recreate, regenerate the energy for the revolution. Thank you very much.
Well, first, I just wanted to thank you for a really brilliant talk, and I think that it's not an easy job to come and talk to Marxists about the defeat and the counter-revolution of a struggle that means so much to you, the other comrades in Syria, and to all of us who watch those revolutions. And I think partly you get an ovation because you still maintain your politics and the revolutionary spirit, and that in itself, I think, for many people who suffered small defeats in a strike or something else, might end up them giving up, walking away, putting their head in their hands. And I think it's an absolute tribute to you and the politics of revolutionary socialism that can maintain analysis and brutal honesty about how difficult the situation is, but at the same time maintain hope. So I just wanted to say that because I think it really means a lot. But I think it's really important also what you did was see the bigger picture of history. You know, the revolutions did happen. Dictators were toppled. The West was thrown on the back foot by what happened. And even though we have seen the rise of the counter-revolution, and of course the revenge of the ruling class is brutal, we've seen that the most in Syria. When you describe Deraa being destroyed, they don't need to destroy every home, but they do that, don't they, to teach a lesson, to say those kids who wrote on the walls, we do not want them to be able to do that again. But that also shows their fear. Because if they didn't fear the popular revolt, why would they go to such lengths to crush it? And I think that sense of understanding, it's not about wild hope and having illusions that a revolution is about to happen tomorrow, but it's about seeing the bigger picture, that dictators that the West funded and held up fell because of a popular revolt in Egypt and Tunisia. And that sense of actually the whole of the region is still in turmoil, and the imperialist powers and the US cannot actually keep complete control of it. At the moment, the instability is looking, at greater conflicts in Yemen and everywhere else. So this isn't a picture of revolutionary hope around the corner, but it is a picture of a world turned upside down where all the old certainties cannot go back in the box. You talked about the millions who still have a memory. That is the same in Egypt, where millions still have a memory. Sisi talks to Israel, talks to the US, and actually imposes even more poverty on those masses who fought against that in 2011. And I think I absolutely agree with the idea that what we can do here, if you say we must always do something, and Cliff said that, we here are not just spectators on this who come once a year and listen to the Syrian revolutionaries. We hear absolutely the refugees and migrants, the Syrians who are on the shores of the EU and who are being allowed to drown. They are our comrades, and we need to fight for them here and say migrants are welcome here, all the refugees are welcome here, and to really fight against that far-right and racist politics that's on the rise. And also our ruling class. When the vote in Parliament in 2003 went against going into bombing Syria, it stopped then Obama being able to do the same thing. Now, of course, they've since gone on the back of US coattails to be a part of the coalition of the willing. But actually, we have to keep coming back to our own ruling class and saying, you're making the situation worse. Look at Libya. David Cameron pretended he was part of the revolution in Libya that brought down Gaddafi. But look at Libya now. That's one of the countries that so many people are fleeing through and from. And so I think that we have a job here. But more than anything, I think what you've taught us today is the importance of revolutionary socialist politics, the importance of understanding of the world, but also building an organisation that's ready for the struggles before they come. And so in that sense, that when the revolutions do break out again, we're better prepared, better organised to really make the most of the opportunities.
Hi, comrades. You know, we always look at the 1905 revolution in Russia through the 1917 revolution. 1917 revolution was a victorious revolution, therefore we can not really think too deeply about what happened between 1905 after 1905 and the scale of the defeat. I remember reading recently a story about Lenin trying to organize a meeting in which 6 people turned up. This was, you really get a sense of the scale of it. But the important thing about 1905 was the lessons learned, not simply by the revolutionaries, but also by wider elements, the cadre of the working class, the ones who are drawn very much towards revolutionary ideas. And we have to look at the experience of the Arab Spring through exactly the same way. I think when I went to Lebanon specifically, but the Middle East before 2011, and how you felt, really a lot of our ideas were very, very conservative about what was going to come, but also very limited. The revolutions exceeded all our expectations. When you saw how quickly the question of sectarianism was brushed away, how quickly people came together, that sense of, what is the real state of the Arab people, you saw this in 2011, but we also saw that actually we weren't strong enough, that actually we weren't rooted enough, that actually there's no shortcuts, that actually now when you go, especially to Lebanon, but also you see in Jordan and back in Egypt and in the rest of the Arab world, that all the conditions that created the 2011 revolutions are there and more intense and much, much harder. But also the lessons that I think lots of people have drawn from this, from the revolutionary wave, are really, really important. And we can only understand the defeat and the horror of Syria, but what is going to come. And what is going to come is a return of the revolutionary wave. There's no question whatsoever in my mind, and no question the scale in which it's going to be, but there's also no question in which that all the lessons that we have learned now, really we really have to push throughout the Arab world. And every time, I always come to meetings on Syria feeling terrible. I really do, because it's a horrific thing to have to see your hopes so high and then for them to be crushed. But the sense of hope, the sense in which this time we're talking to people with real revolutionary experience. Scattered, yes. Sometimes in prison, yes. Sometimes on the run, yes. But that is so important. When 1917 happened, all the experience of 1905 comes back. All the good experience of 1905 comes back. And this is what's going to happen this time. And this is why it's so important that we are central to it and absolutely understand our role in it and our role in shaping it.
Thank you. My name's Jerry Downing. Just to make a few points, the Arab Spring that broke out in Tunisia and in Egypt, of course, was an elemental push from below. It did overthrow the dictators, etc. But Libya was an entirely different thing. For 2 days after the uprising began, the flag of King Idris began to fly everywhere in Benghazi. King Idris was the puppet of British imperialism installed after the Second World War. It was a counter-revolution, and NATO went in and achieved it. One of your main political rivals here, when told us that after the fall of Gaddafi, when he was killed, they said a victory for the Libyan people was also a victory for imperialism. Well, that's just not possible. What's happening in Syria is also a regime change. It is true that at the beginning there was an elemental uprising, much more than in Libya actually. There was a push from below, but very quickly the forces from Saudi Arabia, from Qatar, and the CIA itself were in there. They were in there very quickly, and the jihadists took over. It's true that Assad is a very nasty man. It's true that Assad is a neoliberal. He wasn't actually like Gaddafi in the regime he perpetrated. But at the same time, he wasn't like the jihadists. And that's why he survived, because they could say, look what's coming. Look what came to Libya. Look what's coming now. These people are ferocious reactionaries. The slogan was the Syrians to Beirut, the jihadists, the Alawites to the grave. And the gays and lesbians were murdered. Absolutely ferocious reactionaries. At least Assad was secular. He didn't do any of that. We don't want this to befall us. That was the reason Assad survived, and that's the reason that the Russians came in. One point about that has just happened, of course, and that, in my view, is a very progressive development, is what's happened in the Kurds. The Kurds, of course, were betrayed at Afrin. Not alone did the United States, their ally, allow Turkey to take Afrin, but Russia also withdrew its forces and allowed Afrin to fall. And now Manjib is fallen because the United States handed over Manjib to Turkey. And because this has happened, and they know that what's going to happen next, of course, is Turkey is going to sweep down and crush the rest of them. And therefore they have made an alliance with Assad. That's what they have done. All right, and I think that is a progressive alliance.
Thanks. I'm afraid I have to disagree very strongly with the comrade who last spoke, that we cannot consider the dictatorship of Assad as a progressive dictatorship, as a that it has anything to do with socialism, or actually that it has anything genuine to do with secularism. Assad, throughout his career, has used sectarianism in a very concentrated way and embedded it into the way that the Ba'athist state worked, which explains a lot about why, when he launched his counter-revolutionary offensive, this was in order to transform revolution into a sectarian civil war. That was his tactic. That was why he unleashed the bombing campaigns, why he isolated whole areas, such as Deraa, and bombed it from outside, what they did to Homs, how they selectively sent in the Shabiha and the gangs, sectarian gangs, into Sunni areas to attack people. Yes, I agree in terms of the rhetoric around the jihadist forces. That did make many people within the regime areas very afraid. And we do not have any truck with forces like Daesh or other reactionary forces that were fighting from the Sunni Islamist side in the Syrian conflict. We don't make any excuses for their crimes. We have to be absolutely clear. In terms of the vast majority of the people who were killed in this conflict, both in the revolution and counter-revolution phases, and later in terms of civil war and international intervention, actually it is the regime that is responsible for this. They are the ones who are barrel bombing the areas en masse. They're the ones who are in alliance with Russia, which has actually the greatest firepower in the region. We have to stand in a tradition that says that socialism is not something that can be imposed from above, that whatever ideology kind of covers that up, that we should somehow put up with a state, however bad it is, that it's that can be an excuse for standing side by side with dictators. I think it is possible to do the two things at once. It's possible to say that we are on the side of revolution from below, and that means in these circumstances, look, as the comrade from Syria said, looking for the people, the diamonds, who are the revolutionaries who still have some feeling that things could be different in Syria. Whether for us in Europe, that means concretely working with Syrian activists and working with Syrian refugees as part of our common struggle against racism and against fascism. Working on how to build united fronts, as Ghayath mentioned. This is important for how we get back to a situation where the agency lies with the masses from below, and we do not get sucked into this dead end of seeing regimes such as the Assad regime as progressive.
Hello for everybody. My English name, James Nicholson. My Syrian name, Musaddiq Ashur. Same my dad, what he put it for me. Because I believe in left. I believe we are revolution. We're born for justice and freedom. what's happening in Syria now is divide the Middle East. They divide Middle East in Sykes-Picot, and Sykes-Picot 1 and Sykes-Picot 2. And now Rockefeller and Rothschild family, they need divide the Middle East because oil and gas. And they created Qatar to support what they said revolution. We created revolution since 1964. But the right side, Neem al-Baas party, they take over Syria. And the foreign minister in House of Commons in 2008, she said, we care about Assad, we don't care about Syrian people. The revolution now is still not born yet. The revolution comes with justice and freedom. Revolution, we need her for everybody, not for right or left, just for Syrian. Thank you.
Morning, comrades. Sabah al-khair laka kaman. I just wanted to come back on the point that was made earlier. I mean, I think Anne really came back on it really strongly. But I just want to reiterate something else, really, because, you know, I've been organising around the campuses. I'm a graduating student. And this is a debate that comes up a lot. Are we better off, or is Syria better off if Assad is back in power, and so on? Either because people hate Western imperialism so much that they don't see any problem with Assad and Russia, or for the reasons that were given before, the situation is really, really bad and we can't have ISIS. Comrades, I think, you know, this is a real sign of inconfidence in the fact that the working class can have and should have an independent position. It's not about siding with whatever's there and left. But also, I mean, I don't know how you can see yourself as a revolutionary when you're supporting a leader, even if it's for the sake of, you know, perhaps the situation would be better then. A leader who his people revolted against them. You know, I think we need to be the strength of the Syrian people. And in terms of actually the practice of having an independent working class that can act, you know, in its own interests and its own terms, you know, I think number one, we've got to see our priority of de-escalating the war, because really that hasn't been very possible because of, you know, the situation of conflict and violence there. And, you know, we have a massive part to play in this. You know, people have already touched on this already, but, you know, Lenin constantly drew back to fighting the enemy at home. And, you know, the impact that the British intervention has had, even before the revolution had started. I mean, for fuck's sake, in the first place, they were the ones who were selling weapons to Assad. You know, I think we've got to amp up the pressure to remove Western intervention from the war in order to de-escalate it, and perhaps create a situation where the independent working class can actually start fighting back and making real gains.
I think this will be our last speaker.
We'll be quick, and it's a couple of questions, which you might have already answered because I was a few minutes late. What should have been done last time to secure the revolution? Was it like taking over the TV, the organs of the state right away, so I don't know what could have been done differently, and also what will be done next time. I'm sure.
Well. So, is Assad progressist? هل بشار الأسد تقدمي ولا علماني؟ يعني كدت أن أصاب بالجلطة القلبية يعني.
Is Assad a progressive and secular leader? Yeah, I almost got a heart attack.
Well, I will answer seriously. سأجيب بجدية. I will try to speak English after all.
لا إله إلا الله.
Wait, I will try. I have to swim, so I go in the river. So, no, ترجم أحسن.
طيب.
بشار الأسد أولا جاء للحكم عام 2000 إثر وفاة والده، يعني نحن بنظام جمهوري علماني بين قوسين وهو وراثي في الأخير.
So just to remind you that Bashar al-Assad came to power in 2000 after his father. So if we're in a so-called republican secular regime that is actually an inherited dictatorship.
اثنين، لما اجى بشار الأسد إثر أبيه كان عدد فقراء سوريا سكان سوريا 11%.
And when Bashar came to power in 2000, only 11% of Syrians were considered to be under the poverty line.
بشار خلال 10 سنوات حول 33% من سكان سوريا تحت خط الفقر.
And it took Bashar al-Assad only 10 years to put 33% of the Syrian population under the poverty line.
وهذا إنجاز لم يفعله أي نظام ليبرالي في المنطقة كلها.
And this is an achievement that no other, even liberal regime has been able to achieve in the region.
بشار الأسد أو آل الأسد علمانيين. Point d'interrogation.
Okay. Is Bashar al-Assad and are the Assad family seculars?
عائلة الأسد بشار وأبيه بنوا خلال فترة حكمهم 18,000 مسجد، أكثر مما بنت السعودية والمغرب في نفس الوقت.
During their reign, the Assad father and sons built more than 18,000 mosques, which is more than Saudi Arabia and Morocco built together in the same period.
هذا نظام علماني.
Is this a secular regime?
بنوا 1400 معهد لتعليم القرآن اسمه معهد الأسد لتعليم القرآن. معهد الأسد.
Okay, so they built 1,400 madrasas to teach the Quran that were called the Assad Institute for the Teaching of the Quran.
ولا تشعر بالعار بأن تقول أنه علماني؟
Don't you feel a bit ashamed to say that he's a secular leader?
كيف يمكن أن تقول عن نفسك تقدمي أو ثوري عندما تقف ضد الشعب ثارة ضد ديكتاتور ومجرم؟
And how can you call yourself a progressive or even a revolutionary when you stand on the side of a dictator whose own people have actually revolted against?
في الواقع نظام الأسد كان ليس فقط نظام برجوازي ويستخدم كل الأدوات الطائفية والعشائرية والقبائلية والمناطقية، وهمه الأساسي كان ويبقى اليوم هو بقاءه في السلطة، لا هم له آخر سوى البقاء والاستمرار في السلطة. ولن أعيد تاريخ هذا النظام وإلا أحتاج إلى محاضرة أخرى.
I mean, in a few words, the Assad regime is not only a bourgeois regime that has used religious sectarianism, that has used tribalism and all sorts of divide and rule ways, but its only goal was and remains just simply to stay in power at any cost. And I'm not going to go back to the history of the regime because we need another meeting for that.
كان شعار النظام هو دائما قائدنا الأبد حافظ الأسد عندما كان الأب حيا، وبعد أن جاء الابن هو بشار الأسد. هذا هو شعار النظام، قائدنا الأبد حافظ الأسد، قائدنا الأبد بشار الأسد.
The slogan of the regime was always our leader forever Hafiz al-Assad, and then it got adapted, our leader forever Bashar al-Assad. The subtlety of the Arabic verse is lost on you because it rhymes in Arabic, but
كيف واجه النظام بشعارات مضادة لشعارات الثورة الشعبية التي كانت تقول مثلا الشعب السوري واحد وغيرها من الشعارات النبيلة. كان شعار الموالين للنظام أو شعارات النظام هو الأسد أو نحرق البلد، أو الأسد أو لا أحد. هذه هي شعاراتهم.
The regime confronted the slogans of the revolutionaries, one of which was the Syrian people are one, with slogans like Assad or we will burn the country. It also rhymes in Arabic. So there, the Basis are real poets.
Yes. هذا النظام نفسه الأعمدة الأساسية تبعه كانت أعلنت سابقا حتى قبل الثورة، كان تقول نحن أتينا بالدبابة، من يريد أن يزيحنا عليه أن يزيحنا بالدبابة. مصطفى طلاس وزير الدفاع هكذا كان يقول. المعارضة نحن أتينا بانقلاب عسكري، تريدون إزاحتنا بالسلاح، لا مجال آخر لإزاحتنا.
Okay, and even before the revolution, some of the pillars of the regime, like the former defense minister Mustafa Tlass, used to say that we used to tell the opposition, we came to power on the back of tanks, and you're going to need tanks to remove us.
رفعت الأسد شقيق المدفون حافظ الأسد الدكتاتور السابق، عم الدكتاتور الراهن، كان أحد أعمدة النظام ببساطة بالتصريح وبالجريدة الرسمية لحزب البعث، يعني الجريدة العامة، يقول نحن يعني لا نترك السلطة حتى لو كلفنا مليون قتيل، وفعلوها. هذا النظام فعلها.
Rifat al-Assad, who's Hafiz al-Assad's brother, used to write in the, like a very long time ago, wrote in the official Ba'ath Party newspaper that we will never leave power, even if it takes, you know, a million deaths, and this is something. This was a fulfilled prophecy.
بقاء هذا النظام هو مولد للعنف، وليس أفضل الخيارات في سوريا. أفضل الخيارات في سوريا هو إزالة هذا النظام المجرم.
The existence of this regime is actually the generator of violence in Syria, and it is not the lesser evil. The lesser evil is the removal of this criminal regime. It is the only solution.
في اللحظة الراهنة الأهداف الرئيسية أعتقد التي يجب أن نعمل عليها هي أولا وقف الحرب حتى تعود الناس إلى بيوتها وأماكنها، اللاجئين يعودون إلى ديارهم. هذا هو المطلب الرئيسي حتى نستعيد القدرة على الحراك الشعبي الذي فقدناه.
Okay, and our main objective now is to stop the war, because this is the precondition for the return of the refugees. This is the precondition for to have again the potential for a possible popular movement.
علينا أن نكافح أيضا من أجل أن يكون مهما كانت التسويات بين الدول الإقليمية أن نخلق موازين قوى من أجل أن يكون هناك تغيير ديمقراطي واجتماعي عميق في سوريا، نعلي أصواتنا نحن الثوريين والديمقراطيين السوريين.
And what we need to do, you know, regardless of the way foreign powers are going to agree or not agree on how to on their settlement in Syria, we need to have an independent voice that tries to shift the balance of power towards democratic forces. This is what we as revolutionaries and democratic Syrians have to do right now.
وأن نعد أنفسنا للمعارك القادمة. الآن هذه ليست سوى لحظة ترميم الجراح ويعني أخذ بعض الأنفاس، نأخذ نفس بعد 8 سنوات من القتل والدمار الشامل في بلدنا.
And the current situation right now is that we're trying to heal our wounds. We're trying to catch our breath after 8 very, very, very difficult years in Syria.
بكل الأحوال لا يوجد اليوم نشاط في سوريا تشكيل جبهات متحدة، ليس لنا نحن الاشتراكيين الثوريون المبادرة أو دور رئيس فيها. النضال مستمر والكفاح مستمر والثورات القادمة آتية لا محالة كما قال الرفيق سيما.
Even if right now we do not yet have an actual role to play in united fronts in Syria, this is something that we have to work on, that we keep working on, and we need to prepare the coming revolutionary waves that, as Simon said, are coming.
Inevitably.
Inevitably.
Thank you.